Please join me in welcoming our highly respected guest and fellow Yellow Jacket to the stage, Mr. Bill George.
Thank you so much. Good job. Thank you, guys. I am so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful to all of you for coming. It's just a thrill for me to have this opportunity. I remember coming down here to this campus in 1960 as a young 18-year-old freshman, and I never dreamed that I had the opportunities I've had, all of which I attribute to growing up at Georgia Tech and having many doors open to me since then. Your life journey is very long and winding, and it's very hard to connect the dots in your life when you're looking ahead because you don't know what's ahead for you. And I used to think it was a straight line to the top, but many things happen in life that you can't prepare for. But if you have the grounding that I feel like I got here at Georgia Tech, it gives you the opportunity to fulfill all your dreams. And the opportunities are there, whatever path you choose to pursue. And so today, I want to thank Terry Bloom and Mariana Lavi, the people in the Scheller College, for sponsoring this, for inviting me back to the school to have the opportunity. Many of you are old friends here. I always feel like I'm coming home. I always thought I'd wind up in Atlanta, but life didn't take that course. But I feel like I'm coming home when I come here, and it's always such a warm welcome, and it's just a thrill to be here. When I came here at Georgia Tech, it was known as the best engineering school in the South. I watched it become one of the top engineering schools and science schools in the nation, and now one of the top universities globally in the world. And everywhere I go, I was asking Terry, I said, what's changed in the last 10 or 20 years? Why has Georgia Tech's reputation grown so much? And I think it is all the things been put in place by our leadership, Bud Peterson and his team, Rafael Braz and the entire team, the deans. But beyond that, it's taking on new challenges. But one thing that stands out for me, when we had our 50th reunion here last year, and one thing that stood out for me, and always have when I come back here, is the great Georgia Tech leaders have all taken on leadership roles. All the great Georgia Tech graduates, I meant to say, have taken on leadership roles. And this is a school that turns out great leaders who are well-grounded in science, engineering, technology, but it has turned out an amazing number of leaders. That's not true necessarily at MIT or at Caltech or many of the other great institutions. This is a school that turns out great leaders. And if the world has a gap today, in my opinion, we have tens of thousands of innovators today. One of the things we desperately need are more innovative leaders, people that can bring together innovators and scientists and engineers and technology people to create breakthrough ideas. And I want each of you to think about your role, not just in the field you're studying, but where it may lead you in terms of making a difference, because leaders are what really make the difference in our society. The reason I got into business leadership is I felt we had more power to impact the world for good or for ill than any other form of society. And I'm a great believer in capitalism. It's the greatest wealth creation the world has ever known. And I believe in academia, but ultimately a lot of the money traces back to what capitalism has done. The philanthropy in our country has come out of that. Nonprofits are funded by it. And the government, of course, is funded by taxes. So I think, but the whole idea is you can make a huge difference in your life through your leadership, through using the grounding in your education, the base of work you do, but building on that to take on leadership roles. So I've titled my talk today, Innovation Leaders, but how you discover your true north. Because I think your true north is that thing that points you in the direction of your compass. It's unique to you, where you're going to live your life. It's hard to see it now, but I think you have to have a vision of what's really important in your life. So let me step back just a bit and talk about how leadership is changing. The system works. There we go. So we went out, and for the new book, Discover Your True North, that you all have a copy of, we had done an earlier book called True North and had looked at 125 leaders. And went out 10 years later. We wanted to see how things have changed. And I think there have been dramatic changes in leadership that are not widely recognized. Now, I must say, back in my days as CEO of Medtronic, leaders were venerated. They were held up as heroes. They're on the covers of magazines. Today, we're all viewed, the trust has gone out of the bloom ever since the Enron WorldCom collapsed 12 years ago, and the companies that got in trouble with that, and then followed by the financial collapse of 2008 and 9, there's been a loss of trust. But today, I want to say to you, there are many really outstanding leaders. There are people that get off track. We just saw that with Volkswagen this past week. We saw it with United Airlines. But I can tell you today's quality of leaders is really good. And the young people like yourselves coming into leadership roles are amazing. So I want to just talk about how is leadership changing. See, in my era, leadership, we all wanted to get a job. We wanted to get out of here at 22, 23, 24. We just wanted to find a job. We wanted to join AT&T or join General Motors and be there the rest of our lives. You know, get our 40-year pin, retire and die. I mean, that's kind of the system for men in our era. Lots changed since then. People are living a lot longer. But more importantly than that, organizations are highly structured. We had the military model of World War II is what they were structured after. Today, that's all changed, okay? No one wants to work in a hierarchical, bureaucratic organization. You don't. You want to work in an organization that's empowering. We used to think leadership was about exerting power over others. If you have a leadership role, you don't need to exert power over other people. Your job is to empower them to step up and lead. And wouldn't you rather work for an empowering leader that gives you the opportunity to make a difference? I had that opportunity at 27 years old. I had never been in a line position before in my life. I'd worked in the government after business school for 3 years. I went to work for Litton Industries. I had a boss who was an entrepreneur who bet on me. At 27, he said, Bill, I'd like for you to go. We're just trying to get into the consumer microwave oven business. And he asked me to put together the plan and then to go implement the plan. And we faced many, many challenges. It was a small business at the time, selling restaurants and vending companies, about 10 million in sales. 8 years later, it was about 200 million sales. But the important thing is we were able to create a whole new industry. I was not a true entrepreneur because I was working inside a much bigger company where the funding came from the company. But it was a great opportunity. And I didn't know nearly as much as anyone who worked for me. My job was to try to organize people to how to figure out this whole industry from a standpoint of technology, FDA approval, manufacturing, marketing. We had every problem you could think of. But it was a great opportunity to learn. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So I think one of the things that today, all of you in this audience are looking for early opportunities. And I say go for it. Find someone that's willing to bet on you and give you that opportunity. You don't have to wait in line for the next 25 years. I was at a great scientific organization not too long ago, and they said, you know, it takes 10 years to become a supervisor here. And I said, well, you're not going to attract the best leaders because they want opportunities now to show they can make a difference. And I think you deserve those opportunities. So I think I was at Google on Monday, and I think Google's the most innovative organization in the world today. And what I saw in Google was there is no bureaucracy there. I went there to I gave a speech, but I went there really to try to figure out how do things work in this organization? What makes this place go? And I said, if you understand it, let us know. And I've read the books from people on top, but it is an operation that gurgles up from the bottom, okay? Any of you use Google Maps? Of course you have. You know, Google Maps was a spur project because they give people 20% of their time to go try ideas. And a bunch of people got together and created Google Maps. And they had to put it through all the rigorous discipline. But what a stunning breakthrough. Didn't come from the top. No one on top approved the project. It bubbled up from here. That's the way they're operating. So Google today is a series of independent organizations. That's the way they operate. And so, but they are interdependent. They aren't just all independent. They work very closely together. That's why they've renamed themselves Alphabet. You think self-driving cars are just a figment of someone's imagination? I did. I went out and talked to the people about it, not at Google, but elsewhere. It's very real, and this could be a multi-billion-dollar business for them, maybe a 50 billion or 100, who knows? And see, that's the way innovation happens. You don't know what it is at the outset. You have to bet on something and take a bet. Sometimes you have to bet your whole career on it. So in the old days, we used to hoard information. We used to say information is power. Today, everything is transparent. It's out there. Can you imagine the CEO of Volkswagen USA went to the Congress of the United States after acknowledging that they had falsified emissions tests intentionally, not by mistake, on 11 million cars, and said the people who did this were our engineers, that no one else knew about it. If you've ever known a German engineer, you know that's palpably absurd, that they follow rules. They know the rules. You know, it did not happen down there. It came from the top, okay? And that's where a lot of corruption starts. It starts from the top. So if you don't have an ethical standard throughout your organization, which I thought Volkswagen did, it can destroy a whole company. This company is in deep trouble just because some people did the wrong thing. And so I think it's so important that we bring a new caliber of leaders to our organization. And so we're going to this era of openness. And the other thing the CEO of Volkswagen said is, we're not going to disclose any information. I mean, where does this come from? You know, everything is open, everything's on the internet, and everything's going to come out eventually. And so today, you know, I always say to people, you're a public figure. You better be careful how you live, because everything is public. Everything you put on Facebook, Twitter, any other social media site, anytime you do a YouTube video, it's all public. So I think that's the nature of today's organizations. It's the nature of today's leadership. In my era, something I didn't really appreciate, because I never had a lot of charisma, I never had a great leadership style. Everyone told me how terrible my style was. But we were in an era where it was all about charisma and style. In the 90s, everyone looked for a hot CEO they could bring in and try to change the company who had great charisma and style. I think it's really moved away from that. I think today what people are looking for is people who are authentic, they're real, they don't have to be fancy, they don't have to dress a certain way, it's that they're real people. And what more would you ask for any leader you work for? Is someone who could be real, it could be genuine, could be empowering. And so that is the way that I see leadership changing very much. In the last decade, authenticity has become the gold standard for leaders. And I hope that's what you are. I hope you can be real. I hope you can feel secure enough to be open, to be vulnerable, to admit your mistakes, to be real with the people you work with. Because what more can they ask from you in a leadership role? Now, the most significant thing I think taking place, and it's really happening with your generation of millennials, is that leaders, in my era, leaders are operating, or told by the economists, everyone operates in their self-interest. And the culmination of all that, the great hand of the market makes everything work out. We saw how well that worked out for Enron. We saw how well it worked out for the banks that went under. Today, things have changed. It's all about having meaning in your work. And why don't you want to claim meaning? Of course you do. You're not going to you put more time into work than anything else you do. Claim the meaning, claim the purpose, and find out that you're doing something worthwhile. Don't you want, at the end of the day, when you get to be my age, look back and say, you know, we made a lot of mistakes, we worked really hard, but we really made a difference. We made a difference in the lives of the people we served. And to me, that's what leadership's all about. So what's driving these changes? I see 4 things driving the changes. The first is globalization. A lot of people are opposed to globalization. I'm not. I think it's a great thing. I think opening up our products to 7 billion people, I think having an opportunity to invite people from all over the world. I don't know, every single person, unless there are a few full-blooded Native Americans in the room, every single person in this room is an immigrant in his family or her family. You all come, if you trace your history back, either first generation or 10th generation, we're all immigrants. And that's what's made this country great, because we accept it. Look at the diversity in this room. When I came to Georgia Tech, it was not a very diverse place. You know, we were 99% male, 1% female, and basically 99% Caucasian and 1% Hispanic. You look at Georgia Tech today, you know, this was the first school in the South. When I was a sophomore, we were really proud. Okay, we were really proud to be the first school in the South to joyfully admit African Americans. Georgia Tech's graduated more African American engineers than any other school in the world in the last 10 years. Okay, that's something I'm very proud of. At the same time, the head governor of Alabama was saying no one will ever enter these doors who's African American. I think it's a great thing that we accept people for who they are, not for the color of their skin, not for their race, not for their religion, not for their gender, but for who they are. Isn't that what we all want to be, just accepted for who we are? And so I think your generation is dramatically changing the face of everything, because there is this high level of acceptance. And that is, I think, globalization, diversity is a good thing. I'm not a great believer in quotas, but I'm a believer that you can't make the good decisions in an organization if you have diverse people around a table. And so isn't it great that we can celebrate diversity and bring in voices from all over and have business that operates all over the world? The third thing that's changing that you all know about is technology and social media. This is having a significant impact on the earlier factors I mentioned. And we should embrace technology, but we have to harness that technology to use it. So when my sons say we don't want our kids spending 8 hours a day on the iPad and stealing their grandparents' iPads and using it, I understand that. It's just another communications tool. We had to, I remember the first color TVs came in. It's just a communication tool. You know, I mean, so like the mobile phone, these are just tools. but we have to harness these tools. But we will harness them because they give us a chance for connectedness. I can be connected to you anywhere in the world today. That wasn't true before. It was really hard. And finally, I think the most significant thing is changing the face of leadership of the millennials. You are millennials, so you understand, I think, and I now have 2 millennial mentors. One is 30 and one is 20. I was with the 30-year-old yesterday all day, and he is mentoring me a lot about understanding the new generation. And I think that's so important, so we have an integration, and we can take advantage of what you as millennials offer. And so this is having a significant impact on the face of leadership today. So I think we've moved from an era of hierarchy, if you will, to authenticity. And what do I mean by that? There is still way too much pressure on the short term. And I can tell you the short-term pressures are the greatest killer of strategy, and they're the greatest killer of technology. They're the greatest killer of innovation. Because all innovation involves risks, all strategies involve risk, but also if you want to make a difference. If you think of the great value creators of the last 25 years, they've all been long-term players that have done very innovative things. They may be product innovations, like a pharmaceutical company. They may be business innovations, like Starbucks, but they've all come from innovative players. That's where it's come from. You know, Sears Roebuck's going out of business while Walmart created a whole new model, okay? And so we can't just look at pure technology, but they build for the long term. And I think the focus has got to shift from being shareholder-driven, in spite of the activists, to being customer-driven. Narayan Murthy, who I quoted in my book, who is the founder of Infosys, he said, unless you create genuine value for your customers, you cannot create genuine value for your shareholders. And I really believe that to be true. Unless you create genuine value for your customers, I would go one step further. Unless you can create more value for your customers than your competitors, you'll be out of business. Look at the sad story of General Motors. They once had 52% of the US car market. Today they have 18%. The CEOs, year after year, were financial people until Mary Barra came along and getting the company back on track. They all said the same thing. Oh, the price of oil is gasoline's too high. We have all these government regulations. We have to have catalytic converters. They have all this. It had nothing to do with that. They made cars no one wanted to buy, okay? And if you make a product no one wants to buy, you can't stay in business. And they eventually went bankrupt. Third, I think we're moving organizationally from a multinational organization where we take our goods and export them around the world and have strong local teams to a true global orientation. We take the ideas from Vietnam, we take the ideas from Poland, we take the ideas from Chile and integrate them into a strong corporate strategy. So that's all reversing. You can't do that unless you have a diverse global team working for you. Fourth, leadership is not about just great people on the top. The great leaders I know how to create leadership at all levels of the organization. Okay? It's not about having leaders and followers. You won't find in my book any talk about followers, because I think you're all leaders. Everyone in this room is a leader. Your Creator gave you the capacity for leadership. Now find the gifts that you have and use them to step up and lead. That's what you're called to do. And so when you get to a high-level position, it's important that you create leaders at all levels. Finally, you know, we've got to get away from this idea of incessant business reviews and move to an external focus so that everything is focused outward in the organization. When I went to Medtronic, we had a real problem with an internal focus. And frankly, I didn't know anything about the medical business. I'd had 25 years in high-tech industries. I knew nothing about the medical business. What did I do? I thought I could learn it from the engineers and the scientists. Actually, I knew I was never going to design a breakthrough defibrillator. But we had great people to do that. So I went out and saw 700 procedures where I gowned up over a 12-year period, put on the greens, meet the doctor at 6:30 in the morning, go in and watch him or her do surgery, angioplasty, brain surgery, heart surgery, spine surgery, all the fields Medtronic was going into it. That's how I learned the business. But we brought back that idea that everyone should do that, to be out there all the time watching procedures. I once had an MIT graduate who joined the company the year before, and I had said everyone had to go out and see a procedure a month. And he said, look, I didn't get a master's at MIT in electrical engineering to sit around some darn hospital operating room just watching other people do things. And I said, well, how do you know what to design? We had people designing all kinds of sophisticated software that had no idea what they're designing it for, and they weren't even designing for the right problems. They're designing for internal problems. And so I think it really gets to having this external focus. And again, we have to have rules and processes. The world's complexity, I get all that. But you can't do it if you let those rules and processes shut down an empowering culture. The key today, I'll put an empowering organization up against a power-based, hierarchical organization, and the empowering organization will win every single time. Okay? So what are your challenges as an innovation leader? First, you have to discover your true north. I'll be talking about that. But more importantly, once you do, you have to continue your development. It's no different than being a cellist and going to Carnegie Hall. You have to practice every day, or being a great athlete. You have to be out. I played tennis here, you have to be out on the tennis courts every day if you want to be a great tennis player. You don't go to Wimbledon and just show up. The same as being a leader. Don't ever turn down an opportunity to lead. There is no task too small to have the opportunity to lead. So take every opportunity you have to become a leader, to practice in small things so you'll be ready when you get the opportunity for big things. We'll talk more about your sweet spot, but basically your sweet spot is that job you find that you're very passionate about and uses your strengths. No sense going to a job that plays to your weakness. If you like technology and hate finance, get a great finance person around you. There are a lot of them around, you know? So find out what you're good at and do it, and surround yourself with diverse people. When I went to Medtronic, I told you I knew nothing about medicine and technology. So what did I do? I knew about technology, nothing about medicine. I teamed up with our vice chairman, who was a medical doctor, who was a brilliant person. And we teamed up, and I could go in and ask him very embarrassing questions about how the human body works and how this procedure was going to work. But you need that team. We hired a fantastic person that really understood financial markets. I knew a lot about internal finance, but I knew very little about how the financial markets work. And our CFO came in and shared an awful lot of those things and gave us that strength around the table, because our people needed that too. Okay? So finally, I think leadership is all about having a purpose. So what's your purpose? What do you want to say at the end of the day you did to make a difference? Because if you have no purpose in your leadership, why are you working 60, 70 hours a week? Why are you studying so hard? Okay? It's not just about making money. You'll all make plenty of money to live on. Okay? You may not be billionaires, but you'll all make plenty of money. But what's the purpose of all this? What are you going to leave behind? How are you going to use your gifts to make a difference in the world? Guys, the world is crying out for your leadership. Trust me. The world desperately needs quality leaders like you are. You need to step up and lead. We're calling on you to do that. You can make a real difference. Think about the problems in the world today. You can help solve those problems, the environmental problems, the healthcare problems, the problems with job creation, problems of innovation, problems of world peace. Okay. There are so many problems, but it's going to take courageous leaders to step up into these problems. And you can be one of those courageous leaders that's willing to do that, to put it all on the table, willing to fail, but to work hard to make a difference. And at the end of the day, you'll find out that you actually did make a significant difference. Okay? Well, some of you are going to ask, why does leadership matter? Leadership makes the difference between success and failure in your organization. And I've seen many leaders fail. The root cause of all the breakdowns, like people you say it was subprime mortgages. It wasn't subprime mortgages. It was failed leaders that put their companies at risk by playing a game. And that's why Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch and all these companies went out of business, formerly great companies. But beyond that, all these things I've seen are leaders who failed. Okay, why did they fail? They failed because they put the short term ahead of the long term, and they sacrificed the future of their organization. That's why Sears is out of business. That's why General Motors went bankrupt. Okay, and I can give you, that's why Kodak's out of business today. They invented digital photography. How do you think they're doing with it? You know, they're bankrupt today. Okay? But more significantly, they put their self-interest ahead of that of the organization. I was always somebody who worked for somebody else. I never owned it. But even if you own the organization, you have an obligation to the organization you're building. Larry Page, Google, he has an obligation to all the people who work there and all the people that benefit from his products. So then I think you have to put the organization's interest ahead of your own interest. It's not about self-interest. Well, why do leaders fail? Now, you're going to be surprised at this. Leaders don't fail for lack of IQ. In fact, Dan Goldman, who's the father of emotional intelligence, has shared the data with me. Above 120 IQ, which everyone in this room has, okay? The differentiating factor of leadership is not IQ, it's emotional intelligence. The smartest person in the room does not make the best leaders. Larry Summers proves that as president of Harvard, that being the smartest person in the room does not, so did Jeff Skilling at Enron. You know, that's not what makes the difference for you. It's emotional intelligence. What do I mean by that? It's having a sense of who you are, your awareness of how you impact people, how you're going to interact how are you going to deal with a certain situation where you're under a lot of pressure? It's all of those things. And if you think about it, the qualities that really make the difference in leadership are having a passion for the work you do. If you have no passion, quit and go sit down on the beach, okay? Seriously, if you have no passion for the work you do, life is too short to spend it doing something you hate. Second, do you have compassion for the people you serve? If you're working for Medtronic, do you have a compassion for that patient, okay? Who's out there, whose life hangs in the balance over the products you're creating, developing, or manufacturing, or supporting? Do you have empathy for the people you work with? Because they know, do you care about them or not? Everyone has difficulties. You have empathy when people have difficulties. And finally, do you have courage to transform the organization, transform the directions? The great transforming leaders are doing that. Steve Ballmer took Microsoft down for 14 years. Now Satya Nadella is bringing it back. The man has a tremendous amount of courage to try to change the course of where things are going. So think about these qualities: passion, compassion, empathy, and courage. These are not matters of the head. We can't teach you these in the classroom. You can only get these through life experiences. You get it by bouncing off the world, by rubbing up against the world and having experience. You learn how you're going to respond to a given circumstances. These are all matters of the heart. I was once with Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Buddhist monk, who said the longest journey you'll ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. Okay? And today, I would say every good leader I've ever met has the ability to integrate the head, the analytical side, the logical side, the rational side, with the heart, with qualities of the heart. Even Michael Porter, who is the most esteemed person of the Academy of Management, who's the guru of strategic planning, is saying very openly now, and this is new for him, that unless you're a good human being, you can't be a good leader. Unless you're a good human being, you can't be a good leader. If your heart is shut down, it's hard to be a good leader. So my mentor was Warren Bennis. He died last summer, but I just wanted to share you some of the things he said. He said the most dangerous myth is that leaders are born. In fact, the opposite too. Leaders are made rather than born. Now, I'd say we're all born with gifts, but you have to develop those gifts. He went on to say leadership is character. It's not about style. See, a lot of people are writing about your leadership style, and they train style from the outside in. No, it's about your character. It has to do with who you are as a human being and what are all the forces that shaped you. And he went on to say the process of becoming a leader is much the same as being an integrated human being, not much different than what Porter is saying. Well, the missing element today is innovation leaders. So I want to challenge you to think about being an innovation leader. Not an innovator maybe to start, but becoming an innovation leader, as so many great Georgia Tech graduates have become. We have some of the great Georgia Tech graduates here in the room. They've become great innovation leaders. And you can look at, in the past, you can see the great organizations, whether it's Hewlett-Packard of the past, not today, Larry Page, Eric Schmidt at Google. You can look at the work that Gordon Moore and Bob Noyce did at Andy Grove, did at Intel, which was so stunning. People like Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. You notice a lot of these are teams, okay? And Walt Disney. And by the way, these two people, Ed Catmull and John Lasser, two of the greatest innovation leaders. I spent half a day with these people. They created Pixar. And then Disney bought them to bring creativity into Disney. And they have created the 12 most successful animated films of all time. Okay, if you don't think, go see one of their films. Go watch with your, go watch. I watched with my grandson watch Toy Story, and you understand why this is so creative. Or Inside Out, I think is the one about the 11-year-old girl. And in the medical field, a guy like Roy Vagelos, just a fantastic leader. Arthur Levinson at Genentech. But see, these organizations are led by innovation leaders. So what do I mean by that? See, I think if you're an innovation leader, if you're a scientist, you just want to pursue one area. And by the way, most all the Nobel Prizes will be giving out to teams. They aren't be giving out to individuals. But if you want to pursue things, you have to become a we leader. You have to empower members of your team. You have to draw on the quiet person, the contrarian, the maverick on your team, and draw all these people together. That's your job, to be that we leader. It's not just about you imposing. See, I used to do too much of this. I would impose my ideas on other people, and I would shut down a lot of the creativity. So your job is to be a we leader that can draw out the best from everyone on your team and build that diverse team. And you may have some people that are raw geniuses that have great ideas that don't quite fit. Well, figure out how to use them. Okay, I've talked about IQ and EQ, and I've talked about the importance of compassion and passion and courage. I think, though, it's really important. If you're a leader, you need to align people around a cause and a set of values. We have to know what to do, that we believe in the same things. Do we believe in integrity? Is it integrity to falsify a test? Obviously not. Is it integrity to falsify, to have somebody else write your paper for you? Is it integrity in every single thing you do? If you're dealing with somebody that you don't think they have integrity, are you going to really trust them? Are you going to listen to them? Of course not. Okay? So what do people expect from you? They expect you to have integrity. Don't you want that from other people? So I think that's essential. Can you align your teammates around that? And can you draw on their best talents and then inspire them, empower them, and support your mavericks? But I think Leadership Day is about collaboration. See, it's bringing about, I'll give you an example. Number one school at Georgia Tech in terms of size is biomedical, number one major is biomedical engineering. It didn't exist 25 years ago. Thanks to someone like Bob Nerum, helped build up this major, but it didn't exist because there wasn't a recognized field of discipline. We brought in people from chemical engineering and chemistry and biology and put them all together in a pool over in this new campus, and we mixed them together. That's collaboration. By the way, Georgia Tech does that better than anywhere else. You go to the other great technological institutions, they're all siloed. Tell you, that's the way they operate. They operate in very strict silos. Here, there's tremendous collaboration where it's not pride of authorship, it's an opportunity of solving a problem. And so I think you can't be deflected by short-term pressure, but you have to be committed to produce long-term sustainable results. So that's what I mean by, what do I mean by I leader versus a we leader? I think it's being authentic as opposed to getting ahead. And you will get ahead because people appreciate it. If you want to stay in the same organization, and you're a phony who's stepping over other people, you're not going to get ahead, I'll tell you guys. It takes a diverse team. It takes many of the same things I've said, but there's a certain humility in that. By humility, I'm not a humble person, but what I mean by humility here is having the humility to recognize other people's strengths. Okay, that takes a certain humility. It's not to think you know everything there is to know. That takes a certain humility. To have the capacity to coach and mentor other people. What are you doing as a coach? You're bringing out their best. That's what all good coaches do. And I think all good leaders are also good coaches. Okay? And at the end of the day, who gets the credit? If you claim the credit for what your people do, I'll tell you, they won't work very hard for you. We have a 30% level of engagement, according to the Gallup poll, of people in the workplace. Why? Because a lot of other people take credit for what they do and they're turned off. If you get everyone engaged, think about the impact you can have and let them get the credit. If you're in a leadership role, I say, take responsibility for the failures and give the team credit for the successes. And you'll find that people really appreciate and will do anything for you. So let's talk about what is an authentic leader. There have been many people floating different definitions. I came up with this many years ago. It hadn't really changed after my Medtronic experiences. But basically, I think our job is to align people around a set of mission and values. By the way, people say that's a soft side of leadership. That is the hardest thing to do. It's much easier to get the numbers right. Very hard to align people around the mission and values of the organization, particularly when you work in a big global organization. If you don't have a clear set of values, how do people in Korea know what to do, or in Poland, or in Argentina, or in Alabama? How do they know what to do? You need a clear, the values are the glue that hold people together. That's why Sam Palmisano reorganized all of IBM, 440,000 people, from a rules and process-based organization to leading by values. Because he said that's the only glue that holds this company together. And so then it really becomes to serving all your stakeholders. And it's not shareholders versus stakeholders. The investors are well served if you're meeting your customers' needs and you have empowered employees. Beyond that, though, I think this requires collaboration, and we all have to achieve results, short-term and long-term, and that's the challenge we have, is how do we get the near-term results that give us the chance to play another day, to come back and continue to invest heavily in the future. And that, to me, is what it's all about. So let me ask you, how are you going to discover your true north? Okay. That's my question for you. I think what is your true north? Your true north is who you are as a human being. It's what's most important to you in your life. It's your beliefs, your values you live by, and the principles you lead by. That's unique to everyone in this room. I think most of you, even though the younger ones in the room, you could write this down and say what's really important. What do you believe? What are the things you value? And what are the principles you lead by? The problem is you get pulled off course. You get seduced, okay, by money, fame, and power, okay? And you go to Wall Street because someone will pay you more money to a place where you're miserable because that's not what you want to do with your life, okay? Or you get pressured because somebody's demanding something that's unethical, or they pressure you off course, or you have to take a course of action you don't believe in. This takes courage to stand in the face of that. So what do you have to do to stay on course? What we found, the elements of true north come out of, not of a learned set of characteristics, but come out of your life story. We went out and talked to, as I said, 125 people. It was reinforced by the recent study of 47 more. What people want to talk about is who they are. You want to talk about that. You know that you have an important life story. Do you honor that life story? Some people dishonor the life story, said they're ashamed of it. I have a close colleague who's in prison now because he would never acknowledge the fact that he was orphaned and he always wanted to be a billionaire, and when he was worth $120 million, he cheated by trading inside information to try to become a billionaire, and he spent 2 years in jail. It's a tragedy because he was a formerly great leader. He's written up in the book if you want to read it. But, what are you going to do to honor your life story? Look at Howard Schultz. He used to grow up in the Bayview housing projects in Brooklyn. Pretty tough place, guys. A lot of crime, a lot of drugs, a lot of violence. He said he watched his father lose 30 jobs, 30 rotten jobs, as he said. He thought his father was a loser, and he couldn't wait to get out of there. He went to Northern Michigan on a football scholarship, which he lost after a year because he separated his shoulder. He'd never even been to Northern Michigan. He just wanted to get out of Bayview housing projects because he felt like a nothing person. He said the saddest day of his life was the day his father died because he realized his father never had a chance. And he said from that day forward, his dream was to create a company that his father would be proud to work at. And that's why he bought this little chain, this little three coffee house chain called Starbucks, and he turned it into the great company it is today. But Howard visits 25 Starbucks a week. He's watching the reaction between the baristas and the customers. Do you create a great environment? He takes his daughter back to Bayview housing projects and works there. Okay, he's proud of his background. He said, don't talk to me about letting gays in my facility. I'm proud to do that. We let everyone in. I don't care if you're Greek or Chinese or Muslim. Everyone is welcome at Starbucks. I grew up with diversity. I know what that's like. And so he honors that. You see, he's honoring his life story. Many of the people we talked to, most of the people we talked to, had faced, at some point in time, severe crucibles in their lives. Someone who wrote me after True North, 7 months after it came out, this time in 2007, 8 years ago, I got this letter. It's an amazing letter from a guy. And he said, Bill, let me tell you about something that happened to me 35 years ago. I'm from Uruguay, and he was living in Buenos Aires at the time. He said, I'm from Uruguay, and I was flying over the Andes Mountains with my rugby team, and our plane crashed. And 126 people on that plane, and 64 survived the crash. He said, we lived for 70 days in the mountains with no food and no water and just regular street clothes. And 16 of us survived, and 2 of our guys went over the mountain and brought in recovery because they had given up the search, and we were able to live. And his name is Pedro Algorta. He's one of the 16 survivors of the famous Andes crash that some of you may have heard of, particularly the older people. Alive is the name of the movie. It's a book by Piers Paul Reed. It tells this amazing story of what they did to come together and how they supported it. And he said the people who died were no better or worse than the people who lived, or the people who lived are no better or worse than people who died. But he tells this amazing story. I can tell you, when I brought him in the classroom, the room was hushed. But he said, I went for 35 years and never told anyone about being in this, except my wife, and occasionally I get together with some of the survivors. I went to Stanford Business School for 2 years and never mentioned this to anyone. So he said, and then it came gurgling up when he read the book, and he said, wow, I've kind of buried what happened to me, and he's found a passion through this. He's now helping other people deal with their crucibles. So he said there's 3 ways. See, most of you have had a crucible in your life, a difficult time you've been through. Either you had a health issue, you had a poverty issue, you had a parent issue, you lost someone close to you, you lost a job. All of us have gone through these things. Maybe you lost a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but these things all happen. But he said there's 3 ways to deal with it. You can look back and lead an angry life and say, I was a victim. I never had a shot. I grew up in poverty. I never had a chance. Or I grew up with not the health you had, or I was never upper class, or whatever it is. He said, don't do that because you'll spend your whole life looking backward. Or you can stuff it like Eddie, you can cut yourself off at the neck and say, I'm not going to talk about it. Then you're never a real person. You're never fully alive. You're not able to share all your passions. You're just working from the head. He said the third thing is he told the story of the oyster, of the pearl, and how a pearl is formed. And he said a pearl is, an oyster shell is cracked open and it's on the shore and the sand is washing over it all the time. And the waves keep coming and coming in waves. They never stop. It's very irritating to that shell. And so it forms a substance called nacre, which is mother of pearl. That's not the pearl itself, but inside that it forms a beautiful pearl. And then he said, where's the pearl in your life? When you look back at your life, what pearl did you find from your background that you can take out that's going to tell you your true north in the direction you want to go with your life and how you're going to make something very special out of your life? And I really like that approach. So let me just tell you a little bit about my story. I grew up in an upper middle class family in Michigan. My father was, I thought, a good consultant. He was 43-year-old when I was born. I'm an only child. I had what you would call a good life. But my father thought he was a failure. And so as early as 8 and 9, he was saying to me, son, you're my only child. I want you to become the leader I never became. And he was telling me, I'd like you to head a company. Here I'm an 18, remember when you're an 8 or 9-year-old boy or girl? And he's saying, you could head a company, son. And he mentioned, I've held stock in this little company in Atlanta, Georgia since 1937. It's called the Coca-Cola Company, son. And you could head up this company. Of course, I drank Coca-Cola, but I didn't know anything about the company. And he said, there's another company in Cincinnati called Procter & Gamble, and a third company, an emerging computer company out in the East Coast. It would be great if you could head up a little company called IBM. Well, like I say, I'd never heard of these companies. It was kind of a heavy trip to land a little kid. But, you know, it kind of put in the back of my mind, I'm going to be some kind of leader. So I go into junior high, join every organization. And decide I'm in high school, I join all the organizations. I've never chosen to lead anything. I'm not head of any organization I'm in. I never elected the student council. I'm a good enough player, tennis player to play tennis at Georgia Tech. And yet I wouldn't even like to co-captain my tennis team. So finally, in my senior year, I put my hat in the ring against one other guy to run for president of senior class. It was clear to me I was a lot better leader than he was. And when the votes came in, I lost by a margin of 2-1. So you can see the kids in my high school didn't appreciate what a great leader I was, because I wasn't. Well, I went off to Georgia Tech from my home in Michigan, 830 miles away. Now, if you asked me where I went, I would tell you it's a great engineering school. I can play tennis year-round, great weather, and attractive females down there. All of that's true, but it's not the real story. I was trying to escape myself. I could have gone to Michigan. Yeah, but I wanted to go someplace where no one knew me, so I get a fresh start. But what I hadn't learned is what John Kabat-Zinn has taught me. Wherever you go, there you are. So you can change your venue, but if you take yourself with you, you're going to repeat it. So I came down here. I ran for office 6 more times, lost all 6. So now I'm a real loser, 0 for 7. You know, I joined every organization site, ran for office 6 times, lost all 6. And then some seniors at Georgia Tech in my college fraternity pulled me aside. One of the best things ever happened to me in my life. I never forgot it because I felt this is what helped me grow up. Said, Bill, no one's ever going to work with you, much less be led by you, because you're moving so fast for other people, moving so fast to get ahead. You don't take time for other people. And that was like a blow to the solar plexus, you know, because I could see all my leadership dreams fading away. And you know what? They were right. And I went through a very long soul-searching summer and quite a period after that of really thinking about what did I want to be. Went back and talked to some of the people that rejected me, tried to get honest feedback, put together what I call my own self-help leadership development plan. And I was fortunate enough to lead a number of organizations, my senior and junior and senior year here at Tech, and also when I went on to Harvard Business School. And I came out, Harvard Business School, I went to the Department of Defense. I was on top of the world, guys, working with some really outstanding people. I felt this is really great. And I got called out of an office one day, and I was never close to my father, but I was extremely close to my mother. My father traveled about 75 to 80% of the time. I was very close to my mother. He called to tell me my father could hardly speak that day when he told my mother had died of a heart attack. And I was really heartbroken because I was very close to my mother. I never had a chance to say goodbye to her. And she, I realized, was really the real leader in our family, not my father. But because of gender bias, I'd never tried to emulate her leadership model. But I overcame my mother's death. I fell in love, got engaged to, married for a wonderful woman who was living in Washington, a couple blocks from us, from Macon, Georgia. We got engaged to be married in August of 1968. 1968. A little different. Sorry about that. And again, I was really on top of the world. I remember talking to my fiance on a Saturday night. It was 3 weeks of the day before the wedding, getting married Labor Day weekend. And she'd been having some headaches, but we were going ahead with the wedding, make all the final plans. The very next morning, I'd gone to church, and I came back from church, and all the curtains were pulled in our house, which seemed odd because it was a beautiful, warm, hot day in August. And one of my roommates met me at the door and took me aside and told me her parents had called to say she died that morning of a malignant brain tumor. And I was just devastated. I am a person of faith. And I can understand my own mother's death as the natural order of things. Many of you lost parents, grandparents. It is the natural order of things. But when a 25-year-old who's doing a lot of good for the Operational Regional Commission is all of a sudden pulled from the earth, it's no way to explain that. But many of my friends from Georgia Tech came to her funeral. The next day, people had never even met her. I asked one of them the other day, "Why'd you come?" He said, "I just was there to support you." And if I hadn't had that support in my faith, I don't know how I'd gotten through this. But I still had in my mind, I'm going to be a leader of a big corporation. I went to Honeywell thinking I'd be CEO of this corporation. I was president of Honeywell Europe in my late 30s, came back, got into a series of turnarounds. But I was on my way. I was one of the 2 leading candidates to become CEO of Honeywell. And I remember driving home one day. Now, at this point in time, I met my wife, Penny, the year after my fiance died. We just had our 46th wedding anniversary, so she'd been the light of my life. And she had a good job. Our sons were coming to junior high and high school. We had 2 sons. We had a lot of friends. I'm driving home on a beautiful October day, just like today. All the leaves are turning in Minnesota. And I looked in the rearview mirror, and what I saw was a miserable person, me. Now, how can you be miserable when you have everything going for you? I was miserable, guys, because I was losing. I didn't use True North in those days, but I lost sight of my True North. I was playing the corporate game. The people in the room that have been in the business world know exactly what I'm talking about. I was wearing cufflinks, which I don't wear, trying to impress the board of directors, playing the game, trying to get that CEO job, that idea that planned in my mind decades before, And I went home and told my wife, Penny, what I was feeling. She said, "Bill, I've been trying to tell you this for a year. You just refuse to listen." See, it's the person closest to you that sees you as you really are. And I was losing it. And I'd always wanted to be a value-centered leader who made a difference in the world. I've had that in my brain for forever. And I've tried to do that throughout my life. But I was getting away from my True North. And so I went to my men's group. I've had the blessing of having a group of guys I've met with for 40 years every Wednesday morning. Now, I'm out of town a lot these days, but they go on. We meet from 7:15 to 8:30 every Wednesday morning. And they said to me, "Now, you turned you turned Medtronic down for a job 3 times. Why'd you turn him down?" And I said, and you're going to hear the ego coming out, I always thought I was going to be head of a big company, not a mid-sized company like Medtronic. And they said, "Why don't you give it a shot?" And so I did a whole retake and thinking about that, what I really wanted out of life. What was the title important, why it was important, what the company was. And I talked to the founder, I talked to the CEO, I talked to a number of the people, and I realized this is where I should be. And I remember I'd made the decision, walked through the door 5 months later. I had to close the door at Honeywell before, a much bigger company, much bigger, and it was 4 times the size of the group I was running, the job I had as number 2 person at Medtronic. But I felt like I was coming home, that these are a group of people. It's like when I come back here, that I can relate to, I can learn from each of them, and together we can come together and overcome really tough problems and really make a difference in the world. And I tell you, that was the best decision I ever made, the best decision of my professional life, because I had the best 12 years there. But I think if I hadn't gone through that really tough crucible of losing it at Honeywell, and you can see all the way back to my high school and college years, that I was falling into a trap of making it all about me, not about what I was trying to do, not about who I was, but trying to get the title, win the election, whatever it is. And I hadn't been able really to connect the dots in my life. And by doing that, I was then able to, have an amazing opportunity at Medtronic, and I can say everything that's opened up to me since then is a result of that decision. The result of 2 things, what I learned here at Georgia Tech and that decision I made to shut the door at Honeywell. And sometimes in life, when one door closes, another one opens. You don't know why, but the opportunity is there. In this case, the door to Medtronic had been open for 10 years. I just didn't walk through it. And what I learned was you can take a small organization, a mid-sized organization, and grow into a very large one. We were 4,700 people when I went there, and not even $1 billion in sales, 750 million. Today, the company is 30 billion in sales and 85,000 people. But you know what I'm proudest of those years at Medtronic? It's not the sales, the profits, the market cap, which have had tremendous growth. I could impress you with that, but that's not what was important. When I went, Medtronic had a mission to restore people, has a mission, which is not one word has been changed since the founder, Earl Bakken, wrote it in 1960 when the company was bankrupt. And he wouldn't declare bankruptcy, he was too proud. So he wrote this mission. He said, our mission is to restore people to full life and health. He never said anything about pacemakers, which he'd invented. It was to restore people to full life and health. And that mission meant so much to me. And I can tell you, when I went there, we were restoring 300,000 people a year to fuller lives, new patients every year. When I left, it was 6 million. Today, that number is 15 million. But what matters is it's that one life who had a longer life or lived because of a product we made. And that's when I look back of the pride of the years I spent there. And you can find that pride in your life and your career by feeling like you really are making a difference. And that's the glue that brings everyone together, that sense of mission, that sense of purpose that bring people together. And to me, that's what's the difference between great organizations and failing organizations. It's also the difference between leaders who make a difference in the world and those managers who are just playing the game. And I hope you will devote yourself to being a leader who makes a difference in the world, not just an engineer, not just a scientist, but someone who can use your gifts to bring people together to make a real difference in this world. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So we have an opportunity for some questions. Yes, thank you. Tell us your name, if you would.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Paterka. And so you commented on how it's now you need to be a good person to be a good leader. However, there's been a lot of studies done with organizational behavior, seeing that a lot of individuals tend to fall more into the dark triad. So do you think that change is starting to occur where more leaders are good people, or are they taking on those dark triad tendencies like Machiavellianism?
Well, I'm not a great believer in Machiavelli. I had a boss that tried to practice on it at Honeywell, and it wasn't much fun when you're on the receiving end of somebody manipulating you. I've never been very easily manipulated. In fact, it brings out the worst in me. That's because you haven't processed your crucibles. There are people saying, what about people who are born angry? Wasn't Hitler authentic, or isn't Donald Trump authentic? This is all nonsense, guys. These are all people that have not processed the difficult times. And they're in that victim mode, and they're blaming other people, or they're trying to be the star, rather than recognizing that they really have to go back and realize who they are. And they haven't really framed and processed the challenging times of their life and figure out how they can grow from them. They haven't found that pearl. So I think the dark triad that you're referring to is only the result of lack of personal development. And if you develop yourself and your self-awareness, I think you'll overcome that. And people are not born angry, guys. There may be a few people with the screw loose that are born evil, but no one in this room is, okay? You're not born that way. Even if you feel angry now because your father abused you or you had a rough life or something, that's sad, but you have to deal with that. But you're not born that way, okay? So I think people have, and I do think leaders today are far better. One of the reasons I wrote the book that you all have is I want you to read some of these stories. There are some amazing leaders in there. One of the people I really admire is a man named Ken Frazier. I put up on the chart. I didn't tell you his story. You want to hear something interesting? Ken Frazier is 58 years old. His grandfather was a slave in South Carolina. That means he was born before 1863. And he said, my grandfather did the greatest gift to me that ever happened. He got my father out of South Carolina, where he'd been an indentured servant in the late 19th century, in the 1870s and 80s and 90s. You guys know that. And his father was a janitor in Philadelphia. And he said we lived in the toughest area of Philadelphia, 3rd and 4th Street, where the gangs are all over, tremendous amount of crime, really tough, poor area. And Ken, his father he says, mother died when he was 10. And his father called him in and said, son, and his sister, your mother died today. He said, today is a good day because she's at peace. And he said, that is faith in action. Ken is very much a person of faith. And he had the privilege of going to Penn State on a scholarship. And then he got a scholarship to Harvard Law School. He felt a little out of place there. He came back. And he eventually migrated to Merck and became chief executive officer of Merck. But he said he never forgot what his father said. He said, son, what are you going to do to carry on this narrative of being your own person and doing the right thing that your grandfather started, that's carried on through me? And he said, I'm asking you to do that. And Ken carries that out today. He said, we're making drugs today. We're inventing drugs that haven't been invented for diseases like Alzheimer's and Lou Gehrig's disease and very advanced complex forms of cancer. He said it maybe won't do any good for us for 10, 20 years, but he said maybe 50 years from now we'll be really helping someone. Now that is a leader I really admire. So, okay? He could have been an angry person. Go ahead, who else? Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the inspiring speech. I had a question. So you mentioned about a good leader is one who enables leadership in others.
Yes.
Creates an environment that enables leaders. Do you develop all leaders in your team? Or if you're leading a team, you have multiple people. Do you develop each one? And if you don't have a growth plan for them, then there's an issue because you want them to be leaders, but then where's the growth for them? So
at Medtronic, we had lots of leaders that had no direct reports who set the standards for quality on the production line. They were the innovators in the labs, and they were providing great leadership to other people. And so I think everyone in this room has capacity to be a leader. We're each leading our own way. We don't have to have a big title. We don't have to have a big job, but we can have an impact on other people. And a lot of it's how you live, because you set a standard for other people by the life you live. And so I think, yes, you try to develop all the people on your team and help them lead each in their own way, using their abilities. And your job is to weave that team together. What does a coach do of an athletic team? I'm a soccer nut, but what does a soccer coach or a basketball team or a football? All they do, they don't play the game. They try to get the best people in the right positions on the field and then bring them together and play as a team. And wouldn't you agree that in most sports, most team sports, that a great team will beat a group of individual performers? And I think that's what you do. And the same thing is in engineering and business and science. I visited the great science labs. You try to create that sense of team. And I think that's really your job. That's what leaders do. And you call out the best of your teammates. Other questions? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. Can you speak a little?
Here we go. First of all, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. I had a question about, in reading your book, you speak to self-awareness a lot. And you reference a metric, I think the Johari window, and one of the quadrants is the blind spot, where there are aspects to yourself that both you don't know and others about you don't know. So my question is, how do you access this blind spot if it's unknown by
great question.
everyone?
I can tell you, you're talking to someone that had a lot of blind spots. In fact, I was so blind I couldn't see my own blind spots. So, and you could see that in the stories I told about myself, where I couldn't see there, and somebody's trying to tell me, the only way you can access your blind spots is have honest feedback. Have a group of people in your life that are there for you, that will give you honest feedback, not sycophants that tell you how great you are, but people that care about you and say, Bill, you're going off, man, you're losing it here. You know, what's going on? And who's there to support you? You need that support team in your life. It starts with one person you can really care about. You can share everything in your life. That's been my wife, Penny, and I've shared everything with her. But I have mentors, wonderful mentors. I mentioned Warren Bennis. I have mentors younger than I am. Our dean is 18 years younger, David Gergen. Some of my mentors have died, but having those wise people I can consult, they'll share with you. You know, why are you letting this guy hook you in the classroom? Why are you doing this? Why are you worried about that? You can rise above that. And also having a support team like I mentioned. It's there for you in difficult times, and you got to be there for them, because all mentoring and all support teams are a two-way street. All relationships are a two-way street. So that's how you see your blind spots. And you open up your hidden areas by sharing more of yourself with other people. And you learn. I talked to the person that gave me this phrase, John Hope Bryant, who's running a poverty organization called Operation Hope for financial literacy. But he said, you know, vulnerability is power. So if I share with you the things I did, you can't say, oh, I heard you were the real loser that lost 7 elections. No, I just shared that with you. So you have the power. You're not giving it away. Or Ken Frazier, who I just told you about. I said, Ken, were you ever discriminated? He said, are you kidding? Of course, I was discriminated all the time. He said, you know, if I get angry at you for discriminating against me, I've given you the power. Man, I'm not giving you the power. I'm just going to walk right by it. That's your problem. It's not my problem. You know, the fact that my skin is black, it's not my problem. That's who I am. But he said, I'm not going to give you the power. I'm just going to share with you who I am, and I'm going to go right past it. But I think the blind spot's a really important question, and something we have to work really hard at, because I'm sure I still have lots of blind spots. Next question? Yes.
So you just mentioned that you've had a lot of great mentors in your life.
Yes.
So my question is, what is the best way to stay engaged with your mentors when you might not see them often?
Yeah, good question. Reach out to them when you need them. When difficult things happen, ask them for counsel and advice, and then look them up. When maybe you're living in a different town, like I am sometimes, but reach out to them and check out how they're doing. See if you can help them. I mentor literally well over 100 people right now. I ask them to call me, but all mentoring is a two-way street. So Adam Grant of Wharton wrote an interesting book called About Give and Take. And I actually don't like to mentor people that are taking, that just want to get something from me. I like people where it's an equal relationship, because I think really good relationships are all about giving to the other person. And so I love to do that. But again, my students, I tell them that I'm going to learn a lot more from them than they learn from me, and they don't believe me, but it's really true. Okay, yes?
Hello. First off, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So you said in your talk to to claim purpose in your work, do something that you find purpose in. But what advice do you have for us seniors who are going to go graduate and go into the workforce, where we also hear the advice, you know, when you first start off, you got to do a job you might not want to do the ugly work, the dirty work, until you get to a spot higher up in leadership where you actually do what you want to do?
Well, first of all, don't take a job that's something you don't want to do. Okay, if you hate the work, don't take it. But yeah, you have to do a lot of the detail work, but you're going to learn more about that. When you go into an organization, the hardest thing that top executives have, they really fail, is they don't understand how things work. They really don't understand how things work. I'll give you an example of someone in this town, which personally many know, maybe some of the people in the room admire this person. He failed as a leader. His name is Bob Nardelli. He came down here as CEO of Home Depot. He had not a clue what made Home Depot go, and he imposed his own ideas in the company to make a lot of money. He took all the service off the floor and standardized all the equipment and took away all the benefits, so they were no different than Walmart. And he failed because he didn't learn about how things work. You got to get out there. That's why I gowned up and saw those procedures. When I worked in the defense department, I got down at the rock bottom level and find out how things are really going on. So you learn from that. But remember, if someone asks you to lead, no job is too small. So you take that opportunity and show what you can do in the smallest of leadership opportunities. Lead a little committee, do a little task, take on something that no one else wants to take on. That's what people are looking for. If you can do that well, then you'll get the bigger opportunities. And you don't have to wait till you get a bigger opportunity to lead, though. You can lead right now. Okay? Got time for, what, 1 or 2 more questions? Yes?
I just wanted to know, like, if you're working in an organization, and as far as the micromanagement of people is concerned, like for myself, if I'm in a leadership position, I can start empowering people and perhaps I can avoid the micromanagement. But what if my boss or my line manager is sort of a guy who likes to micromanage and he is always indulging in my line of work? So how can I handle that?
Well, I would say invite him in and share with him everything you're doing and engage him and ask him for his inputs, okay? I don't like the phrase micromanagement. I think it's very pejorative. I think good leaders today are engaged. You know, it's the story of Howard Schultz going out and seeing 25 stories a week, or Brian Cornell, the new CEO of Cornell, of Target, is out in 25 Target stores a week. I think you need to be engaged, but you need to be probing, asking questions. And I think if you invite him in or her in, they'll gain a lot of insights and they'll gain confidence in what you're doing and give you more and more latitude. I think that's the way to handle it. Just closing people out makes no sense to me. I know that I've seen places where they actually lock parts of the offices, and that's really a bad sign when companies do that or operate behind closed doors. I think you open the place up and invite everyone in. And that's the environment I always tried to create in the organization that I was in, to invite all those opinions. But I think as a leader, you've got to be engaged. You cannot sit in your office and figure it out. You got to get out there on the firing line and figure, if you're going to run an airline like Richard Anderson at Delta that's done such a spectacular job, you got to fly the airline. You don't fly around your own private plane. You got to be out with the people. You got to see what's happening with the flight attendants, what's happening on the line, what about the baggage handler, what are the problems? You got to see those firsthand. Then you can go back and design a solution. But if you're sitting in your office designing solutions, you don't know what the real problem is. So I think in every endeavor in life, the CEO of Merck, in between Roy Vagelos and Ken Frazier, was a wonderful human being that never engaged the researchers. He never asked a question. He would sit in a research for a day and a half of research presentations, and at the end he'd say, thank you very much. I tell you, they were turned off. They wanted to be challenged. They wanted him to ask tough questions. They wanted to know, they wanted to know somebody cared. That they were not just going all out for something that no one cared about. And so I think people today want that level of engagement. The great leaders, I talked to Paul Pullman of Unilever, who's in the book, who's one of the great global leaders. He's become my role model, a great global leader today. He is always emailing me. He responds like Alan Mulally to every email. So I always get a response, normally within half an hour. And he may be in Chile, okay? He may be in Indonesia. He's all over the world. He's understanding the business at the ground level. And I think that's what you have to do today. And that no different in technology, you're getting to understand what's the root cause of the problem. You know, not just kind of stepping back from it and trying to have a theoretical solution. Okay, last question. I'd love to keep going. I'm happy to keep going, but I think I'm going to get hooked off the stage. Okay. You're right there. You got it. You got the mic, man.
Okay. All right. Say you're in an organization in which there is an appointed leader, but this leader does not engage the other people who work in the organization very well. How would you suggest encouraging this leader or this appointed leader to engage the other people in the organization in the ways you've described?
Well, first of all, I would do it yourself within your own organization. If you work for this person, you encourage them to show them how you're operating, what you're doing, and try to encourage him to be more like that. Some people don't want feedback. Some people don't want to operate like that, but give them a shot, give them a chance. Give that person the encouragement to do it. But be the role model for the organization. And then get your organization to perform really well because people want to know why you're so successful. Okay?
Okay. Before we have our last question, I want to make one quick announcement, is that Bill will be signing his book. Correct, Bill? At 6 o'clock.
You bet. If anyone wants to see it,
we'll also have a reception right outside the auditorium once the session is over. Was there one question over here? Okay. This will be our last question, Bill.
All right. I just want to say thank you so much for coming to speak. As a freshman here at Tech, it's really motivating to be able to go and see these impressive speakers and kind of have my mind inspired for what my 4 years can accomplish. Now, at the beginning, you spoke about how you had like an entrepreneurship opportunity and you were working on building something from the ground up. And you've obviously had a lot of high-level corporate experience. So I was just wondering, because entrepreneurship is such a buzz topic now and kind of in colleges and universities all around, everyone's like, oh, entrepreneurship is good and innovation and leadership. How do you see leadership changing from, as an entrepreneurship, like building something from the ground up, or as a COO or a CEO when you were working from the top of a multi-billion-dollar organization? Like, were there differences in how you led in both situations? What kind of approaches did you take, and how were they different?
I actually led different, made fewer changes than you might think. I think it's like I was saying to him, it's engagement, okay? It's staying involved. And, you know, I said the greatest gap we have are innovation leaders. We got tens of thousands of innovators and entrepreneurs right now, but who's going to be the leader of that group? And how many of these entrepreneurs can grow into them? I see some of them with a huge chip on their shoulder, and they're going to blow up. You can just see it coming. I meet with a lot of them in Silicon Valley, and they actually are honoring that kind of negative approach to leadership, and I think it's not going to work. And the companies that are successful are going to find that. But I actually think it's no different. A lot of these people that really grow, I really admire, this will surprise you, but I really admire Mark Zuckerberg, because here's a kid, 19 years old, dropped out of college, probably your age, you know, and he's really built something, but he has grown as a leader, and he has tapped into some of the really great mentors. Donald Graham, the head of the Washington Post, is somebody he tapped into and uses all the time to consult with. Mark Andreessen, who's a great venture capitalist, and the leading venture capitalist. He's got other leaders he really listens to and taps into, and he's sought out their advice and counsel. And that's why you see Facebook continue to grow. And he teamed up with Sheryl Sandberg, who was 10, 15 years older, great leader, and in her own right, and he's the product guy and she's the business person, and it's worked really well. But you need that kind of partnership and you need to see yourself continuing to grow and to broaden your capabilities. So I like to think of leadership, you're like a giant oak tree, okay? And you may start out as a sapling, and you're growing, and you start spreading your leaves and limbs and branches to the whole world, and you grow a beautiful tree. But that tree is nourished from the roots. Okay, you don't nourish a tree from the leaves and the branches. You have to feed the roots. And the roots are who you are. It's your life story, the challenges you've overcome. It's the values you live by. That's how you nourish it. And you continue to nourish it, and you have people around you in life who are nourishing to you, whether it's your family of choice, your family of origin, your friends, your support team, the people, your mentors, the people you can count on who help nourish you, because it's a tough world out there. And just like an oak tree goes through horrible weather things, they grow through the nourishing of the roots. And you have to do that too. There are a lot of bad forces out in the world today, I can tell you. And the only way you can withstand that and have the courage and the resilience to do that is to have a set of beliefs in yourself and what you believe in, and surround yourself with people that help you grow and care about you, and you care about them. And so, you know, life is long, but I encourage you to go through life with people like that. I still have close friends who I went through Georgia Tech with. You stay in touch. You don't see each other all the time. You'd like to. I don't live in Atlanta. But you have those close friends that I have close friends from high school. I ran into one of them on the airplane the other day. You know, so you stay in touch with people even if you're not close together. So let me just close with the words of Albert Schweitzer, the man who won the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but this much I do know. The only ones of you who will be truly happy are those who have sought and found how to serve." So the best of you are going to lead great things, great innovations, but you're going to do it in the service of a cause or the service of others. And if you do that well, when you get to the end of your life, you can look back and say, you know, we didn't do it perfectly, we made a lot of mistakes, but we made real contributions along the way. Thank you very much.